Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm Stephen Willis. He's Brian Smith, and we're going to talk about all the primer information you need to know before early signing day coming up on Wednesday. But first, I do want to let you know, LinkedIn is the college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Brian, I wanted to kind of lay low a little bit and not talk about the same thing seeming like over and over and over again. But with signing day coming up in about a half a week, as this is going to air on Sunday night, and we're recording this on the previous Friday, so it's still inside of a week until signing day. There's a couple of names that have popped up recently that I was kind of curious to get your opinion with. And first of all is Kavion Broussard, the offensive tackle out of Louisiana. He's a Miami commit. He visited Ole Miss this weekend, and this seems to be the candidate that is just of the player that just kind of popped up out of nowhere with the Lane Kiffin recruiting that we've seen throughout his career.
Well, what is present to the eye in public is not always the same to the eye behind the scenes in recruiting with coaches. I guarantee you Lane's had his eye on him for a while and their staff. You know how this works. You've been on both sides of this ledger. You do your homework before you offer anybody, especially an offensive lineman or quarterback, because that's a developmental position regardless. This kid's long. He's athletic, 6'7", 260-ish, but he's also a kid that needs another year or two to get bigger and stronger. Some schools didn't want to move on him early, but Miami jumped all over him. But his visit, I was just kind of doing some background. I think Miami's all but given up on him ending up in their class. I'll just leave it at that. Ole Miss has done their research, and they're going after him. Maybe the kid wants to stay closer to home, but he has a chance to be Ole Miss's future left tackle.
Yeah, and it came out, I think Broussard has a quote out there right now as being from Louisiana. He has been waiting for the SEC offer, and he wanted to play inside the SEC. So apparently that local regionality draw is a really big deal for this kid.
You know, I can't blame him. You know, where he lives 30 minutes north of Tiger Stadium. Is it really all that surprising that he's interested in the Southeastern Conference? I mean, he's not just from Louisiana. Like, he lives on the edge of Baton Rouge. So, yeah, it's a big deal for him to play in the SEC.
Yeah, and somebody it'd be interesting to see in Ole Miss's class, because I know the trench play, offensive and defensive line. Ole Miss obviously is doing some work right now on the defensive side of the ball, but everybody's asking questions about the offensive side of the ball as well. Now, yesterday, changing gears just a little bit, crystal balls were in for weeks about how Ole Miss was trending for Kewan Lacey. And then about 30 minutes before the announcement, all of a sudden you started to hear about Missouri, and Kewan Lacey ended up committing to Missouri. And 10 minutes after that, all of a sudden, Dante Dowdell, the 2023 class running back out of Picayune, Mississippi, they went to the Oregon Ducks, popped up in the transfer portal. Ole Miss was famously probably second in that recruiting, and in modern high school football recruiting, top two is what you're shooting for. It's better to get him than not get him, but you at least want to be top two. And you have to think the Rebels are a prohibitive favorite for a really good running back.
That's a big-bodied running back that's got good feet. He can sink his hips and make players miss. He's from Picayune Memorial High School, which is one of the most prominent programs in the state of Mississippi over numerous years. I actually saw them play earlier this season. That's the kind of kid that you would hang your hat on in 1985 or in 2023. Really good football player. So if Kiffin can get him, he's a guy that can come in and compete for minutes right away. I'm telling you, that's a big-bodied kid that can move. I'm surprised he didn't make more of an impact at Oregon year one, but for whatever reason, he's in the portal. Perhaps the Ducks' loss will be the Rebels' gain.
Yeah, it was a situation, and I cannot prove this, and nobody is going to admit this, but I think secretly Dante Dowdell wanted to go to Ole Miss the whole time. I think him and Kiffin had a relationship, and then the Oregon Ducks popped up. I guess Nike money. I don't want to be that person that says somebody bought somebody, but in this day and age, you know, who knows? Oregon is known for having a really nice backing in there, and they're recruiting nationally at this point. So that's probably what it was. They made him an offer he couldn't refuse, but 2,000 miles away from home, that wore on the kid.
Not many kids from Southern Louisiana, Southern Mississippi, Arkansas, that whole area do well all the way out in Oregon. I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. Really, really interesting stuff. Anyway, this weekend was the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. As we're recording this, it's before the game, but the game has already happened by the time you're listening to this. Anthony Maddox, the quarterback out of Oak Grove, a commitment to Texas A&M, that Ole Miss is a rumored flip candidate to get him, showed out all week in practice. Now, this is my comp, Brian. I'm not saying he's as fast as him, and I'm not saying his arm is as strong as him, but stylistically, when you look at the kid play quarterback, he looks like Jaden Daniels. Like I said, he's not going 23 miles an hour down the field, but they look good. They're slight, the body types and stuff like that. Stylistically, there's a similarity.
They do look a lot alike. That's a great comparison. The only question with him, because he's in Southern Mississippi, we both know this, covering the state, they don't get nearly as much comp in terms of all the hype with other, kid that's identical that plays just outside Atlanta is going to get 10 times as many articles written about him. It's just the way it is. I think he's a better player than what he's ranked. And look, we can make fun of Fisher and all that, him getting fired at A&M, but he jumped on Maddox early. He didn't get dumb overnight. The one thing about Jimbo, I like to pick on him in some ways, you can't pick on him about recruiting. The guy was all out all the time. That's just fact. And he wanted Maddox early. Kiffin also kind of knows a thing or two about quarterbacks. That's just the rumor I've heard. I kind of like where that's trending. And his athleticism in Kiffin's system to run RPO game would be a great fit.
Yeah, and also he has a younger brother that is currently a sophomore in high school that's trending towards a 5-star on the defensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, and also a brother younger than that I think Lane Kiffin has already offered as well. So that Maddox family has a chance, a little bit of assembly line type work handling in Oak Grove, Mississippi. So what are you hearing? What are the most interesting stories that you're hearing leading up to signing day right now?
Well, the one that we started with Kavion was one that I kind of knew there were some possibilities. A couple of hours ago, I'd heard about it. And again, we're doing this on Friday, that Ole Miss was going to get him. That was the first thing. Alabama, they're missing on the running back they wanted from Meridian, Mississippi. He's going to go Mississippi State, from what I heard, but they're going to flip the running back that's committed to Miami, but lives close to Tuscaloosa. I mean, it's just everybody's kind of moving around. The other thing that I have not, I'm hoping that you've heard something. There's a certain guy that went to the Texas A&M Aggies that's in the portal that's a defensive tackle. I've heard Ole Miss had some interest there. If you could enlighten me, because I have not found out diddly about that young man. But I mean, look, there are only so many guys that can move at 20 pounds like that. Is Ole Miss involved?
He, at this point, as people are watching this today, Walter Nolan has probably just left campus. His official visit was this weekend. It's kind of a 2-horse race as we sit right now between Ole Miss and Oregon. He is originally from Olive Branch, Mississippi, which is about 50 miles up the road from Oxford, Mississippi, and that's why the Rebels have more than a puncher's chance in this. And Ole Miss's collective is quietly really good and is allowing them to be really competitive with the way they have it set up. Walker Jones and those guys are doing a fantastic job. But Princely Uman Mielen, he is, good by now, by the time you watch this, the expectation is he's committed to Ole Miss. Tyler Barron, the defensive end from Tennessee, just finished official visit at Ole Miss. Kamarion McDonald, the defensive back from Tennessee, just finished the official visit. Their recruiting in the transfer portal is just a ludicrous level at the moment.
I don't know what it is about them. And here's a little shout out in general to these guys. Teams are starting to now have, and I'm not kidding when I say this, college football programs, general managers, and people that just handle the portal or a combination thereof. I don't know what Ole Miss's back office looks like. And obviously Kiffin likes recruiting in general. He's good at it. They have to be one of the more well-organized teams, not just in the Southeastern Conference, but college football, because you wouldn't have all those guys, one after the other, lined up unless you were. So shout out to the Rebels for being on top of it. Because if you take the wrong portal guy, look at A&M's situation. Like they took too many guys that went there for the wrong reason at high school. They had a lot of infighting. it didn't help their roster or their win-loss record despite the talent. Kiffin's raised the bar. So they've gotten a lot better with how they've acquired talent. And this is the latest example of that.
Yeah, if you look at what they did this year, and most every major contributor off last year's team is back, and Ole Miss finished 11th. So just by that, you would say that as is next year, Ole Miss should be in the conversation for a playoff berth. But Ole Miss is consistently bringing in players to strengthen position groups. If they can get just 70% of the players that they're bringing in, you're looking at a fringe top 5 team, a host a home playoff game type stuff, rarefied air for Ole Miss fans.
That's why it's cool, though. I'm not thrilled with a lot of the things that are going on in college football with the portal and NIL. The one unique part is what you're talking about right now. The team, I mean, you got to want to win. You know, when I say that, not just somebody bringing it out in a press conference, who do you hire? How you handle the collective and how it works together, that's been a conundrum. Look at Florida, obviously, with what happened there in the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, that's been a disaster. If you have those things organized, and obviously Ole Miss does, you can go from here to here pretty quickly. That's what's unique about the portal. It used to be a lot of kids didn't transfer because they just flat didn't want to sit out a year. And I get it. So which teams are more organized and getting it done? You got to put Ole Miss in that conversation.
You know, that raises a question, the lawsuit that happened in West Virginia, where they're talking about basically the challenge of the sitting out of a year and the ability for the NCAA to require, on the second transfer. I think we are nearing a point where after this ruling, if you just read the tea leaves, it's basically unlimited transfers. It's free agents every single year. And Brian, I think what has to happen is the universities have to just kind of suck it up, take players as contracted employees and make them sign 4-year contracts. That's the only way stuff like this is going to be stopped, in my opinion.
I don't think the players would ever sign anything like that, though. That's the thing. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but if you're a player, why would you sign that? And I don't want to get into contract law either. I have no interest. I hate that stuff with a passion. But I get what Steven's saying. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
But why would anybody sign that?
Yeah, it's a crazy stuff because we are basically, honestly, if you want to look at it, if anybody's a baseball historian out there, and I could be getting some facts wrong, there's the era that led up to the beginning of the reserve clause added to the baseball thing and basically the foundation of what professional sports in America became. That free agent every year thing, it was them trying to figure out how to stop that. And they figured out with that reserve clause and they stopped the freedom of movement and all that led to basically, honestly, what we're seeing in college athletics now. But they're going to have to open them up. Well, that reserve clause eventually got done away with. Free agency happened, but the college game, they have to figure out some kind of a way. You want to protect Title IX. You want to protect things like that because it does real good things. But the only way that we can stop this movement the way it is Title IX basically has to become a non-factor, and these players have to be some sort of a tie to the university other than a student athlete, in my opinion.
And you already know what I'm going to say. The people that are really strong on that Title IX front want everybody to be paid like equal. It's not realistic. Yeah. And that's never gone away because there's 2 sports primarily that pay for all the bills: college basketball, college football. In some places, Ole Miss being one, baseball, and like Oklahoma State or Iowa wrestling. There's a few exceptions, Tennessee and Connecticut women's basketball, but 99% it's football, basketball. You can like it or dislike it. They pay the bills. They are different. You can bitch all you want. That's just the truth. Without them, there are no women's sports because nobody can pay for them. So yeah, that is awkward in today's political world. Which college president wants to step out there and say that publicly? Good luck to them.
Yeah, you're in a situation right now to where if they do that, and for some reason, let's just say hey, we're going to move the football players over into this basket because we need to do that for business purposes. We need to do that. Well, that cuts all of the money out of Title IX because now they're a separate entity.
That's what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
And I get it. But I mean, if they're employees and you're not really, because you're not going to pay the women anywhere in the same stratosphere. You're not even going to pay most of the men's sports. Like the
Mm-hmm.
rowing team is lucky to beat the rowing team.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know how you fix that. Nobody's ever figured that out. It's been around for 50 years. So I'm not going to claim to know anything different today.
Should be interesting. What do you got planned for the next, 3 days?
I will be in front of a computer. Look.
I believe, yeah.
I mean, like, I was thinking about going to a signing day like Jeremiah Smith or something, but I'm like, while covering that is great, I'm going to miss 28 other things. There's no way to do what I do good. It's impossible, especially like I try to be active in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Florida. As you know, living here, it's humongous. So there's no way to cover hardly any of it, but in front of a computer gives me my best chance. So looking forward to it. It'll be interesting.
All right. Before we get out here, let's see. Anything on Andy Jaffe?
I mean, he just got his 4-star on Rivals. He's a great kid. I haven't heard anything different about his recruitment, if that's what you're referring to.
Oh, he's signed and sealed at Ole Miss. He's going to be there. I was just wondering, like, his high school career, if anything happened that I didn't know about.
He just got his 4-star on Rivals. He's finally getting his due. Great kid, great family. He'll play at Ole Miss.
Yeah. He is that guy, and I said this even before he committed to Ole Miss. He's that guy. If he'd have went to Wake Forest, you would have woken up. He's a junior all ACC type player.
100%.
Yeah, that was the direction that he was going. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, joining the show, man. We appreciate it, buddy.
Take care, sir.